Next level, general class. To qualify for an amateur radio license, you must pass certain exam licensing elements. Element 2 is technician. It's 35 question written exam. Element 2 and element 3 is general class, 35 question written exam for each. Element 2 and 3 plus 4 is extra class. The extra class is 50 by itself. 120 questions and you can be an instant extra. Okay, special rule for expired licenses. As the 2015 amateurs who were previously licensed but let their licenses expire may receive credit for the exam elements they passed. While you must still pass the element 2 technician exam if you can provide documentation that you had a general, advanced, or extra class license that was not revoked, you will be credited with having passed those written exam elements.
After you pass the tech.
After you pass tech. So if you were an extra, to get your extra privileges back, all you got to do is go take the tech test.
After 2 years.
After your license has expired, yeah, 2 years. So you got a 2 year, that 2 year grace period you had that we talked about earlier. If you go past that, you got to take tech, and then you get whatever.
Not the amateur.
You're not taking anything but tech, and you get everything back. Volunteer Examiner Coordinator, VEC. That's the guys who certify us. So Volunteer Examiner Coordinator is created by signed agreement with the FCC. That is the ARRL and some other group. Credits, that's the word. Volunteer examiners, or VEs, like Dave and I. Coordinates exam sessions. Maintains records of all exam sessions, including passes and fails. What's the FCC do? For 35 bucks. What does the FCC do for 35 bucks? Forward successful applications to the FCC for processing. All the FCC does is go, oh, you got them. Okay, click. Okay, Volunteer Examiner Coordinator, 14 of them nationwide. 14, entire country. There are ARRL VEC, the exam fee is $15, and it administers more exams than the other 13 VECs combined. Who's the big dog? The Whiskey 5 Yankee India VEC, their exam fee is $14. You can save a buck by going through them. They administer more exams than the remaining 12 VECs combined. And Laurel VEC has no exam fee. That's Laurel, Maryland. And they administer more exams than the remaining 11 VECs. So yeah, those three out of, there's 14 of them. Each of them administers more than all the other ones below them. National Conference of Volunteer Examiner Coordinators, NCVEC, that's the guys you can complain to about the questions. Organization of all the different VECs. There's probably from those 11 other VECs that we get these weird questions. Yeah. Coordinates actions of the VECs, provides liaison between the FCC and the VEC, establishes the question pool committee, exam preparation, question pools maintained by the NCVEC. So not the FCC doesn't even maintain the question pools. The NCVEC does. All VECs are responsible for the question pools. You can go and download the entire question pool off the internet. You can see all the errata, you can see all that stuff. Volunteer examiner requirements. This is yellow. At least 18, never had your license suspended or revoked. Got to be a general class or higher to prepare or administer a technician. So to test a technician, you have to be a general or higher. Advanced or higher to prepare and administer element 3, general. And you have to be an extra to prepare or administer the extra. So when you hit extra, we're going to hit you up to be a VE. Because if you're a general, you can only test techs, and we teach you guys to be generals. Okay, a team of three. Extras can test extras, and generals and tech. Generals can only test techs. And advanced, which is one.
Realistically, the only reason I went extra was because of.
Yeah, that's one of the few reasons to get an extra license. Okay, team of 3 VEs is required at a test session. You got to have 3 VEs. Now, if we got somebody who has special needs and wants to be tested out there, we got to have 3 in here, 3 out there with him. Conduct local exam session in accordance with policies adopted by the coordinating VEC. For us, that's the ARRL. Forwards all the exam session paperwork to VEC for processing. There is no more paperwork. It's all digital. As soon as we're done, pretty much it's click, boom, it's gone. And then they go click, boom, it's gone, and the FCC goes, oh, click, and you have your license. We had one was within less than 36 hours after their test.
Mine was less than 24.
Less than
an upgrade.
Right, but this was a brand new license, less than 36 hours. Used to be weeks.
Mine was a week. Mine was 3 days.
Okay, examination rules, 97-511 sub delta. No VE may administer, I don't know why that's not yellow. I thought that was a question. No VE may administer an examination to his or her spouse, children, grandchildren, stepchildren, parents, grandparents, step-parents, brothers, sisters, stepbrothers, stepsisters, aunts, uncles, nieces, nephews, and in-laws.
Essentially, if they are on your family tree, don't go.
The in-laws aren't on my family tree. During the exam, all 3 VEs must be present and observing the candidates. Candidates must follow instructions of the VE team or have the exam terminated. During the exam, all 3 VEs must immediately grade exam and notify candidate whether they pass or fail. We don't have to tell you your score. If you fail, return the application to the candidate. It's all digital, so you don't really get nothing. If you pass, all 3 VEs must sign the application and issue a certificate of successful completion of exam CSCE, which is valid for 365 days. The first time you take the test, it's kind of worthless because it doesn't mean anything until your license hits the ULS. If you upgrade from tech to general or from general to extra, then it's got meaning because that's all you need in your hot little hand to use those new privileges. Note the CSCE allows a licensed amateur to immediately operate with the newly tested privileges. After the exam, the VE team must forward the session paperwork to VEC within 10 days after the exam. We usually forward it the next day. That's I'm not sure. I don't deal with that part, but I think it's like click.
This was all written in the mail days.
And we still do have paper backup in case the systems go down. So if you show up and the computer ain't working, we can still test you. We won't be happy campers, but we can manage it. Okay, our goal is for you to have your call sign within 10 days. New licensees can operate as soon as their call sign appears in the FCC Universal Database. Amateurs who upgraded to a higher class license can start using new privileges immediately. When using new privileges, you must use special station identification until a new license class appears in the FCC Universal Licensing System. And that's going to be /alpha golf or /alpha echo. /alpha golf for general is the only one that's on the test. Readministration of examination. The FCC can readminister any exam element to any licensee. So they can walk up to me and say, "Why don't you take the extra test?" Really? Okay. FCC can designate a VEC to readminister the exam. Pretty sure it wouldn't be the VEC that I'm coming from. Licensee must appear or license will be canceled or amended. FCC determines that a VE fraudulently administered or certified an exam, his or her station license can be revoked and the operator license suspended. So if they find out that we cheated and gave you a pass, we can get our privileges yanked. Who may receive partial credit for the elements represented by an expired amateur radio license? Alpha.
The only answer in there that says who can demonstrate.
Yep, and it's not 5 and 15, it was 2015. What action is required to obtain a new general class license after a previously held license has expired and a 2-year grace period has passed? Isn't this the same question?
Yep.
Sure is. Delta, expired, must show proof of the appropriate expired license grant and pass the current element 2 exam. Boom. What license examinations may you administer as an accredited volunteer examiner holding a general class operator license? Good thing you asked those questions. What can you administer? Tech only. On which of the following band segments may you operate if you are a technician class operator and have a certificate of successful completion of examination, CSCE, for general class privileges? Yeah, tech and general, because you got the CSCE in your hot little hand. So it is Charlie. /alpha golf, yes. There we go. Who must observe the administration of technician class license examination?
Alpha.
3 of general or higher. Until an upgrade to general class is shown in the FCC database, when must the technician licensee identify with with alpha golf after their call sign?
Alpha.
Whenever they're using general privileges. Volunteer examiners are accredited by what organization?
Charlie.
Volunteer Examiner Coordinator, or VEC. Which of the following criteria must be met for a non-U.S. citizen to be an accredited volunteer examiner?
And it said that earlier in the slide.
Said it.
Oh, really?
You gotta have a license. There is no citizenship requirement. How long is a certificate of successful completion valid for exam element credit? 365, 1 year. What is the minimum age that one must be to qualify as an accredited volunteer examiner? Now here's a requirement. Why would that be? Got to be able to enter into a legally binding contract. Control operator privileges, frequency privileges, US amateur HF bands. It's on the manuals, so we got all that. It's the band plan. I'm not going to spend much time here. Frequency privileges. When using a 60-meter band, it is the only channelized band. If you use an antenna other than a dipole on 60 meters, the FCC requires that you keep records of your antenna gain in a logbook. So there's where you will have to have a logbook if you're using 60 meters and something besides a dipole.
Why? Do you know why they?
Because they said so. It's a channelized, and FEMA uses it for emergency comms.
We are secondary on that thing. FEMA owns that.
Right.
So effective radiated power of 100 watts with respect to a dipole. So what it is they're not wanting you to put out tons of power. And so if you have an antenna other than a dipole, they want to know how much gain it has. Okay, frequency privileges, general class HF bands. I think some of these, nope. They're just things you have to learn. When an entire CW portion of the band is not available to a control operator holding a general class license, the bottom 25 kilohertz is reserved for amateur extra class operators. The longer wavelength, lower frequency, bottom 25 is for AEs, amateur extras, when an entire CW portion is not available. When an entire phone portion of the band is not available to a control operator holding a general class license, the upper end of the band is available. Okay, so the general is on the higher frequency. If you're an extra, you can get to the lower frequency, left and right. Okay. Beacons. An amateur station transmitting communications for the purposes of observing propagation or related experimental activities. For the purpose is the observation of propagation and reception. So that's what beacons are for, so that you can observe propagation and reception. So some beacons send out a signal limited to 100 watts PEP output power for a beacon. So beacons are the transmitting communications for the purpose of observing propagation or related experimental activities. The purpose is the observation of propagation and reception, and it's limited to 100 watts. Only one beacon per band at any one location. That's the question that's almost always on the test. One beacon per band at any one location. They are restricted to specified frequency segments in each band. And on HF frequencies, automatically controlled beacons are limited to 2820 to 2830 megahertz. Avoid transmitting on 14.1, 18.110, 21.115, 24.930, and 28.200 as a system of propagation beacon stations operates on these frequencies. That's a pretty cool system.
And likely on your general test, that's going to be on.
Something about that. Repeater operations are restricted to the portion above 29.5 on 10 meters. Repeater coordinators work with repeater operators in selecting frequencies. If interference occurs between a coordinated repeater and an uncoordinated repeater, the licensee of the uncoordinated repeater system is responsible for resolving the interference. So if there's somebody goes out and gets a coordinated repeater frequency set and my repeater is interfering with it, I'm responsible to fix that. Some authorized amateur frequencies are shared. Primary and secondary users, no amateur band is shared with a citizens radio service. Yeah. You cannot talk to those boys. There are non-licensed Wi-Fi stations operating lawfully in a part of the 13-centimeter, 2.4 gigahertz band that is shared with hams. Amateurs may not communicate with these non-licensed stations. It's a mesh network and it's not ham, but it's in a shared band. Primary versus secondary. Amateurs have primary status on most bands. 60, 30, and 70 centimeters and several microwave bands are the exceptions. We can use bands where the amateur radio service is secondary only if they avoid interfering with the non-amateur primary users. Secondary users must take necessary steps to avoid interfering with primary users. Change the frequency. That's the easiest way. One-way comms. Are one-way comms allowed?
There's an exception.
Think that through.
It's government. They're going to be a exception.
Always an exception.
One-way transmissions are permitted in the case of International Morse Code practice transmissions. They're also allowed to broadcast, which is one way for the ham radio news. On which HF and or MF amateur bands are there are portions where general class licensees cannot transmit. General. Where can general not transmit?
Alpha. Charlie.
Charlie.
It's Charlie. 8, 4, 2, and 15.
And the way to remember it is 15's the only one.
Ah, there you go. Ah, no, there's a 15 right there.
No,
on the end.
On the end.
Oh, on the end. Okay. On which of the following bands is phone operation prohibited?
Bravo.
30 meters, digital only. On which of the following bands is image transmission prohibited?
Bravo. Look at your band chart. It's
Yeah, that's why you need the band chart right in front of your face. Which of the following amateur bands is restricted to communication on only specific channels rather than frequency ranges? That one's easy, right? Delta, 60 meters? It's only one, right? Five channels.
Yep.
Which of the following frequencies are general class licensees prohibited from operating as control operator?
I think it's alpha.
It's alpha, isn't it?
I think it's alpha. Sure.
When does phone start for general? On 40 meters. Which of the following applies when the FCC rules designate the amateur service as a secondary user on a band? Charlie? Okay, Charlie. On which amateur frequency in the 10-meter band may stations with a general class control operator transmit CW emissions? You just have to remember it. Who's got the band plan?
Look at the, in the key box, the very top note.
Yeah, that's super duper fine print. CW operators permitted throughout all amateur bands. Which HF bands have segments exclusively allocated to amateur extra licensees?
Bravo.
Same thing, huh? 80, 40, 20, 15.
Yep.
Which of the following frequencies is within the general class portion of 15? Well, those are all far enough apart. You can do the math, right? 300 divided by the frequency in megahertz. Uh-oh.
Charlie.
15 meters. Dang.
That's close.
Well, if you go 300 divided by 21.3, what do you get?
About 14 something.
300 divided by the frequency in megahertz. Flip it around, wherever you got to do it.
Well, if you're looking at the question, you should be dividing 300 by 15. It's 20. You are given
All in frequency.
15 meters. 300 divided by 15. It is 20. And which one is closest to 20?
21.3. Okay, which of the following frequencies is available to a control operator holding a general class license? So the general gets what?
All the above.
Yeah.
Must be. Yep, okay.
That's what it is.
Okay, in what part of the 2.4 gigahertz band may an amateur station communicate with non-licensed Wi-Fi?
Delta.
God.
Unlicensed, there's the key. Non-licensed Wi-Fi, nope, can't do it.
Wait.
When general class licensees are not permitted to use the entire voice portion of the band, which portion of the voice segment is available to them?
Bravo.
The upper frequency. Which of the following applies when the FCC rules designate the amateur service as a secondary user on the band? How many times we have been asked a question about secondary? A bunch. They're going to want to know this, aren't they?
Charlie.
Can't cause harmful interference. Definitely can't cause willful, huh? What is the appropriate action if, when operating on either the 30 or 60 meter bands, a station in a primary service interferes with your contact? Ooh. Station in a primary service. That's indicating to me that you're not primary. What do you need to do?
Oh, I can increase your transmitter's power.
Can we just send a letter to the FCC and say, take his shit away?
I like get a bigger hammer, you know.
Oh, okay. Move to a clear frequency. Which of the following may apply in areas under FCC jurisdiction outside ITU Region 2? Outside ITU Region 2, which is the continental United States, Alaska, Hawaii. Or no.
Oh, Alaska.
All of the Americas. Leave it.
Yeah, I don't know why they say that.
I don't know. All of the Americas.
It's not hard.
Delta.
You are in FCC jurisdiction. The language is not going to change, okay? Frequency allocations may differ because you're in a different ITU region.
Yep.
What portion of the 10 meter band is available for repeater use?
Yes. Delta.
You're just guessing what?
And this isn't even
Delta.
shown on your band plan. You have to go to the
Yeah.
usage plant.
Yeah, it is delta, 29.5. With which of the following conditions must beacon stations comply? Okay, we had a whole list, didn't we? Are those things on that list?
Alpha.
Alpha. Who said, oh, delta, what?
Yes, all those, the frequency has to be posted on the internet or published in the national periodical.
I did not realize that.
I didn't either.
It has to be listed for sure,
Remember, we're talking about a very select group of stations called beacons.
even though alpha is correct.
Well, they're all correct.
Yeah, okay.
It's just not correct.
Which of the following is the purpose of a beacon station as identified in the FCC rules? What's the, it's not automatic identification of repeaters? Didn't think so. Which of the following one-way transmissions are permitted? We had this question already. It must have been a tech question, now it's a general question. Transmissions to assist with learning the International Morse code. What about unidentified test transmissions of less than 10 seconds?
Unidentified? Yeah, there's a problem.
Transmission assist with learning International Morse code. What are restrictions on the use of abbreviations or procedural signals in the amateur service?
Problem.
Bravo?
Do not
Oh.
obscure the meaning.
Obscuring the meaning of the message is not allowed. What is the power limit for beacon stations? 100 watts. Frequency allocations of which ITU region apply to radio amateurs operating in North and South America? We are in region 2. Charlie, when is it permissible to communicate with amateur stations in countries outside the areas administered by the Federal Communications Commission?
Oh, geez, what a mouthful.
Yeah, well, look at all that text up there too. You know how hard that was to fit on there?
Yeah, probably.
Oh, the ITU is
Keyword is object to such communications.
Well, first of all, it's amateur stations. So we're not talking third party. Talk to any amateur station that their country hasn't objected. On what band do amateurs share channels with the unlicensed Wi-Fi service?
Charlie.
Wi-Fi, 2.4 gigahertz. We got some other stuff now, but 2.4. Technical rules and standards. Good amateur practices in all respects not specifically covered by FCC rules. Each amateur station must be operated in accordance with good engineering and good amateur practice. 97.101 sub-alpha. Now, where do they define good amateur practice?
97 FCC.
No, government does not. They,
97, you've got a copy right there. Please read 97.101 alpha.
that'll slow us down. I was trying to get through these.
In all respects not specifically covered by FCC rules, each amateur station must be operated in accordance with good engineering and good amateur practice.
Correct. Now, where do they define good amateur practice?
FCC.
No,
No, it's not defined.
It's undefined, it's just don't be a
it's catch 22.
Exactly. Don't be a jerk.
Okay, band plans, repeater coordination, courtesy, RFI, and radio frequency interference. All those are part of good amateur practices. So, that's the catch-22. Transmitters and amplifier power. Effective radiated power is ERP. Transmitter power minus your feed line loss times the antenna gain is effective radiated power. So that's the effective. ERP is where you don't need the amplifier if you have a really good gain antenna, because you can jack the ERP up. Transmitters, an amateur station must use the minimum transmitter power necessary to carry out the desired communications, 97.313. Okay, you must use the minimum transmitter power necessary. Maximum power output, 1500 watts PEP. FCC rules regulating maximum power specify PEP output from the transmitter unless otherwise noted. So it's out of the transmitter. So if you got an amp coming out and putting out 1500 watts and you got a gain antenna, you can really get crazy with some power levels. But all that means is you don't know what you're doing and you got to try and brute force it.
Bigger hammer.
Exceptions. 60 meters, the ERP of 100 watts PEP with respect to a dipole. That's effective radiated power, not PEP. 30 meters is 200 watts PEP. Spread spectrum's 10. Novice and technician operators are limited to 200 watts PEP on HF. PEP, peak of rate
And
effective.
all of that is on your band plan.
Yeah, it is all on there. So 60 meters at a ERP of 100 watts with respect to a dipole, ERP, and 200 watts PEP on HF for novice and techs. The question is going to ask you about techs. Digital transmissions protocol must be public so anyone can monitor. Limits on the symbol rate. Higher symbol rate is a higher bandwidth, and that's why. 160 meters to 12 meters, you can use 300 bauds. Maximum bandwidth is 1 kilohertz.
This is wrong.
Yeah, this is wrong.
That's wrong?
And here's the new data. As
Is there a new one?
8th, you said?
Yeah.
Yeah, January.
Oh, they changed it. That's right. They were talking about that.
But this is the data that is on the test.
Right. So this is not correct, but this is the answers you have to give them. But you have to answer the question with these. 10 meters is 1 kilohertz. 12 to 160 is 1 kilohertz, but only 300 bauds instead of 12. Okay, so that's what the questions could be on your test, and you'll probably will get one of them. I think it's the baud rate is the question. So 10 meters is 1200 and anything else is 3.
And immediately after you take your test, ignore this.
Yeah. Who or what determines good engineering and good amateur practice is applied to the operation of an amateur station in all respects not covered by the Part 97 rules?
Alpha.
Where do they define it?
Don't.
What is maximum transmitter power an amateur station may use on 10.140 megahertz? That's going to be what? What band is that? 300 divided by 10 is 30. 30 is, how much power can we use? 30 is digital, right? Do we need a lot of power for digital? So 2,000 is more than we're ever allowed to use. 1,500 is all we're allowed to use. It's not going to be one of those. Is that a lot or is that a lot?
So you're saying it's alpha equals true.
Alpha, because 300 divided by 10, 30, and 30 is digital. We don't need a lot of power on digital. What's the maximum transmitter power an amateur station may use on a 12-meter band?
Charlie.
1,500 watts is the most you can put out. PEP. What's the maximum bandwidth permitted by FCC rules for amateur radio stations transmitting on U.S. upper sideband frequencies in a 60-meter band? Maximum bandwidth. 2.8. That's the channelized.
Here is the sideband is always either 2.4 or 2.8.
Yeah. Which of the following is required by the FCC rules when operating in a 60-meter band?
Alpha.
Did you read them all that fast?
Got to the point where they're good.
That's got to be that one. It's alpha. If it's anything but a dipole, you got to keep a record in your log. What's the limit for transmitter power on the 28 megahertz band for a general class control operator?
Charlie.
How'd you know it was Charlie?
Because we're talking power level on frequency.
Because I just studied that last night.
Because we can't go 200, and everything, almost everything else is 1,500. Yes, max. What is the limit for transmitter power on the 1.8 megahertz band? 1.8 megahertz, that is 160. Roughly 160 meters. Around 1.8 to 2, and divided by 300 divided by 2 is 150, and we use a little less than 2, so, all right, it's a little less than 2, so it's 160. Limit for transmitter power is almost everywhere but 60 and a couple others is 1,500 watts PEP. What is the maximum symbol rate permitted for radio or data emission transmitted at frequencies below 28 megahertz?
Delta.
For now, for the test. You could go faster, but for the test. What's the maximum symbol rate permitted for radio data on the 10-meter band? 10 meters is what? 1,200. What measurement is specified by, and that's, again, for the test. What measurement is specified by FCC rules that regulate maximum power output? What measurement?
Delta.
There are others, but that's one of them. What is the maximum power limit on the 60-meter band?
Charlie. Bravo.
60 meters. What's the key with 60 meters? Dipole. 100 watts with respect to a dipole. ERP. What is QRP?
It's low power. Bravo.
Bravo, low power operation.